One of the assessment criteria on the IELTS speaking test is pronunciation. It consists of 25% of your total speaking score. However, it could be argued that it's worth a lot more because good pronunciation means your examiner is more likely to understand what you are trying to say. And as you should know, this links with your fluency and coherence, another marking criterion on the IELTS marking rubric. But that's not all. Good pronunciation can help your listening skills. As you know, in English, we like to omit certain sounds and words when we speak, which makes it difficult for non-English speaking people to understand what we are saying. So by understanding some of the pronunciation features, such as connected speech, and we'll cover all these in this lesson, you'll more than likely improve your listening skills also. Good pronunciation is all about speaking clearly and in a way that your IELTS examiner can understand you with minimal effort. So there you can see the link between pronunciation and fluency and coherence. Now, there is a common misconception among IELTS candidates that pronunciation and accent are the same thing. This is not true. You do not need a British or American accent to speak clearly. Therefore, be confident with your accent and always prioritize speaking clearly because accent will not cost you any scores. Have you ever struggled to understand a native English speaker? Well, if so, there's a good chance it was because of their pronunciation. You see, in English, we rarely pronounce every word properly, or at least as it should be. Another example would be when you read a transcript from an IELTS listening test. Have you ever thought how much easier it is to read what is being said rather than listen to the sentences? So this is all to do with pronunciation because speech and writing are two totally different skills. To be clearly understood in your IELTS speaking test, you need to at least be aware of the range of pronunciation features included in this lesson. A good place to start is with the individual letter sounds because these are what make up the individual words. As this improves, you can then work on improving pronunciation on a sentence level. The features that I'm going to include now are explained in the same order of priority. To score a 5 or above in pronunciation, you need to be able to pronounce individual sounds properly. All of the individual sounds that we hear in the English language appear on the phonemic chart. This chart is separated into vowel sounds at the top and consonant sounds at the bottom. Each word is then made up of these individual sounds. Now, most people struggle with at least some sounds, such as the schwa. They find it difficult to pronounce correctly. The phonemic chart is very useful for identifying and practicing these difficult sounds. So if you have a problem with a certain sound, please do check it out. Online dictionaries often have the phonetic spelling of each word if you wanted to check afterwards. Now, you're probably aware of what a syllable is, but if you're not, every word in the English language contains a certain number of syllables. In English words with 2 or more syllables, 1 syllable will be stressed, and it's important to know which one that is for pronunciation. The classic example here is photograph and photographer. While the words are very similar, the stress is placed on a different syllable. Here's some helpful advice when you're trying to figure out which syllable needs to be stressed. So in most 2-syllable nouns and adjectives, the first syllable takes on the stress. Samples, carton, rainy. On the other hand, most 2-syllable verbs and prepositions often have the stress on the second syllable. Relax, receive, direct. Now, it's not just syllables that need to be stressed, because within sentences, we also emphasize certain whole words too. We do this to emphasize that particular word's meaning. Here's an example. Meet me at 9 p.m. on the corner of 7th and 8th Streets on Saturday. Now, it's clear from this sentence that the speaker is trying to emphasize the time and location. Perhaps they have already agreed on Saturday as the day, so there's probably no need to emphasize Saturday. So now it's your turn. I want you to read the following two sentences and make sure you stress the words in bold. You'll notice that they both say the same thing, but they have different meaning because the stress is placed on a different word in each sentence. The police said that Mr. Brown stole the money. The police said that Mr. Brown stole the money. Now, the first sentence identifies Mr. Brown as the thief rather than some other person, whereas the second person emphasizes that the police were the ones who made the discovery and not anyone else. While some words are emphasized, others are weakened. These words are understated because they don't actually carry any specific or important meaning within the sentence. For example, words like prepositions that are only really used for grammatical purposes. What do you want to do this evening? In this sentence, the first do is a weak form because it doesn't have any specific meaning, whereas the second do is stressed. Weaker IELTS candidates usually only use strong forms. In other words, they give every word equal emphasis and importance. So they often sound robotic or unnatural, and this can really lower their pronunciation score, but also their fluency and coherence score too. We use connected speech because it's just an easier way of saying certain things. Here are a few examples. When two vowel sounds meet, we tend to insert an extra sound. Listen carefully. The media are to blame. Law and order. I want to eat. Please do it. When a word ends in a consonant sound and the next word begins with the same consonant sound, we don't use both sounds. Instead, we join them together as one. Listen carefully. I'm a bit tired. We have a lot to do. Tell me what to say. A consonant at the end of the word and a vowel at the start of the next word are also linked. Get on. Not at all. It's no joke. Here's some other examples of connected speech. In order to minimize effort during speaking, us English speakers often completely forget certain sounds in words. Interest, similar, library, different, tonight, Christmas, sandwich, you shouldn't have. Tell him. Intonation is all about the music or melody we use to speak. We've all come across someone who speaks at the same boring tone and ends up sounding a bit like a robot. Through intonation, we can also affect meaning. Take this sample part 2 IELTS question as an example. What would you do if you won $1 million? Now imagine if your entire answer was spoken in a chilling, low, flat voice. This leads you to sounding like you've absolutely no attitude about the topic you're talking about. This is a little bit boring and can also affect the examiner's ability to understand what you are saying. It is much better to sound enthusiastic about what you're saying. So to express a high energy emotion such as happiness or excitement or even annoyance or fear, you would raise the pitch of your voice. And what this does is it clearly indicates and emphasizes the fact that you are feeling a certain way to the examiner. And then as you approach the end of the sentence, you begin to lower the pitch of your voice again to indicate that you are coming to the end of your thought. There are many variations to using intonation properly to emphasize a particular emotion or feeling, and that's just a very general rule. But I want you to look at this very simple sentence, and I want you to think about how a raised pitch actually indicates excitement. So I want you to listen carefully. I would be so excited. Now it's clear that using the right pitch here has clearly caught the attention of your examiner, whereas on the other hand, if a lower pitch were used, well then that would indicate boredom, disinterest, and maybe even sarcasm. These are emotions that we don't necessarily want to get across to the examiner, and we don't really mean to tell the examiner that we are bored or that we're trying to be sarcastic. So that's how important intonation is, because it can change the whole meaning of what you're trying to say. Good pronunciation is usually the result of lots of listening and repeating. Being aware of the various pronunciation features is a really good first step. But just like when you're trying to improve your grammar, don't fall into the trap of buying a textbook on pronunciation. Now, the reason for that is because pronunciation, just like grammar, should be part of every aspect of learning English and should rarely be learned separately. Here are some ways you can practice and improve on your mistakes. It's a good idea to find the specific pronunciation feature that you struggle with most. Now, this can be done in numerous ways. For example, you could ask a native speaker to assess you. You could also record yourself reading a breaking news English article and then comparing how you sound to how the narrator sounds on the website. This will highlight some key differences, because a lot of the time you may just need a simple adjustment, such as speaking a little slower or pronouncing a specific sound correctly. But if you think about it, if you're going to be repeating that mistake over the 11 to 14 minutes, it's going to become a lot more problematic and probably lower your score for pronunciation. To find out how your own native language affects your English pronunciation, type pronunciation tips for Arabic or French speakers, whatever that native language is. Now, if Arabic is your first language, you can also download my free ebook, which is just under this video, and that will be very helpful for you. As the old saying goes, practice makes perfect. If after lots of practice you still lack confidence with your pronunciation, just remember there are 3 other criteria the examiner will be assessing you on: lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and fluency and coherence. So a higher score in these 3 criteria may actually compensate for a weak pronunciation score. And finally, stop worrying about your accent and focus on speaking clearly. Remember, speaking in a way that requires little effort for your examiner to understand should always be your priority. So that's it for today's lesson. I hope you got a lot from it. If you have any questions about pronunciation in the speaking test, please post them below and I will do my very best to answer them as best I can.